So I guess the first item is the Grafton Lake parking issue.
Steph, do we want to deal with that one? Because we can't make any recommendations and it's a referral.
I wonder to, yeah, okay. Maybe not. Unless committee members have questions. Or
Well, Tanya, do you have questions?
About the parking area?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. I'm gonna have to muddle through with my toddler. I guess one of my questions is just about, obviously I raised it in an email, just about concerns about sort of road runoff into the lake itself, into our drinking reservoir. And then the second one being, which I think it was partially addressed, is the second one being in road runoff into salmon habitat. So I've been working largely on characterizing a large number of contaminants in road runoff with respect to salmon. And just so that's where my headspace is. One is we aren't even giving clean drinking water to our Cove Bay residents currently. And then we're looking at reducing impervious surfaces by building
Murray's here.
A parking lot. And then the other is from the salmon perspective as well.
okay, thanks, Tanya. Murray, you're gonna have to decapitate Ron
Okay.
in a violent coup d'etat.
No, Ron, keep it up. No, I'm sorry, I'm in town.
Why don't I suggest this? Why don't we answer Tanya's question, or Patrick, I guess, and then roll back to the beginning of what should have been our agenda and start rolling it off from there. And then Murray takes over.
Murray's we've just got a quorum. You were the one we needed for quorum.
I realized that when I saw I didn't look at your message, but I realized when you sent me a message, that was probably the reason. Anyway, my apologies. So, yes, go ahead and answer Tanya's question.
Well, Ron, do you think that Patrick will be showing his presentation now that we have?
Oh, okay, yeah, I guess
so we can do the whole thing in one.
We'll just start at the beginning.
Okay.
So
You can know what to do.
do you have the agenda in front of you, Murray? It looks like you're driving.
Kristen's got her hand up, Steph.
Murray, Kristen has her hand up.
Sorry, I thought Ron was still chairing the meeting.
I'm happy to chair if you don't have the paper in front of you. That's what.
Yeah, no, I don't have. No, I'm just here to make it a quorum. Okay.
Okay.
Don't rely on me for anything.
Okay, well, your knowledge. Okay.
Sorry, so Ron, Kristen has her hand up. Ron.
Kristen.
Thanks. Murray, I just wanted to take a moment to just offer on behalf of staff our condolences on the loss of Janice. It was a really big loss, and we're all feeling very, very emotional about it. So thank you for being here today.
Okay, thank you.
Same.
Thank you for joining us today too. Yeah. Okay. Approval of the agenda. Anyone have any comments on today's agenda? No comments. I'll just move it as approved. Adoption of the minutes of April 3, 2023. I've reviewed them. I have no comments or concerns. Any comments or concerns?
No problem.
Okay, I move that we adopt those as well. I guess I need a seconder for that, but I assume it's carried unanimously, so we're good. Right, I'm back to the wrong page. Here we are. Public comments. I don't think there's any members of the public here.
Nope.
So we can swiftly move through to council referral for the Grafton Lake parking. Now, Patrick, you can't dodge us any longer. Presentation.
Are you on mute, Patrick?
Sorry, Patrick, can't hear you.
Patrick, we can't hear you.
You want to sign out and sign back in again? Sometimes that
You got
works.
your volume on and your laptop?
So you had your headphones on. I find when I have my headphones on, it won't pick up the other microphone.
I might send someone up to help you. Oh, no, we're not allowed to do that. We just got in trouble for that very thing.
Engineers don't need help? What?
I don't know. Everyone's not supposed to be running to the admin team to help for computer things, but we're the ones who know what's going on. So I don't know. It's tough. Looks like Kristen's gone to help him.
Oh, you're driving along too, are you, Allison? Oh, you're muted.
Well, I'm on mute, so you can't hear Alan swearing at the other drivers. So,
Oh, geez.
yeah, we're down in Olympic Village. So anyhow, so we'll find a park, and we've just driven through McDonald's drive-through, so we now have lunch. So.
Well, I think I'm going to drive out to the ferry during the meeting. I'm pretty sure that that this will work.
Yeah,
So,
you might cut in and out, but it'll stay connected. I've done that. Yeah.
yeah, I've got it through my cell network.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yes.
Yay.
All right.
Yay, Kristen.
Sorry about that. I don't know. I'm having lots of trouble with computer audio.
Can you just turn it up a little bit, Patrick?
Okay, it's up as high as it'll go.
Okay.
Sounds good.
So I'll share my screen. So currently we're in ownership, the municipality is in ownership of most of the land around Grafton Lake. There's a part along Grafton Road that's still to be handed over as part of the next phase of subdivision for the Grafton Lake developments. So there is a recreational trail use that's ongoing. People park along Grafton Road. Currently, it's one of the spots they park. There will be a multi-use path constructed through there by the developer, and they've proposed a parking location just off of Grafton Road. It shows the wetland boundary on the map here. There is and this is getting to Tanya's question about runoff. I mean, there is a significant vegetated buffer between the parking area and the lake and the edge of the wetland, and then even further to the lake. So that's really the main factor that addresses the concern about runoff, is that you won't have direct runoff into the lake. There is other options that we looked at. This has been developed to a concept design level. There's 11 parking spots here that would replace the parking along the road and essentially keep people off of parking along Forster Lane, which isn't set up for that. There was some talk about some potential other locations along Forster Lane that you could develop parking. That hasn't been developed to the same extent. It was just looked at at the site visit. So there are a few spots along the road where you could make a parking area, either angled parking off of the road or similar sort of design with a designated parking area. There's probably more valuable trees along Forster Lane. There's still a significant buffer between where the parking would be in the lake. Probably slightly more buffer between the parking and the lake. But in either case, you would have that buffer, and there is a need for parking because people will come and use the trails around the lake, and certainly it won't be available. Parking won't be available along Grafton Road, and it's not really suitable currently along Forster Lane. So just a few photos of possible locations along Forster Lane where that would be an alternative to what the developer has proposed off of Grafton Road. So that's the situation. The developers offered to construct this parking area at the proposed location. I'm not sure what their position would be if we're insisting on the parking going along Forster Lane. Whether we would have to finance a portion of that.
Patrick?
Yeah.
My understanding is that we have a $10,000 deposit to pay for parking.
Yeah.
And so that would go towards constructing what would be on Forester Lane from talking to Carla.
Yeah, so that's true. That's what we do have. The estimated cost for this parking area is closer to $40,000. And, the developer has offered to potentially have the deposit, the $10,000 deposit returned and to construct this parking lot on their dime. I'm not sure the same deal would apply to the other locations. The intent here was to have more of a trailhead. So you would have, your parking area and potentially some benches. You could possibly put a pit toilet facility there.
So the 10,000 would have to pay for A, B, or C, or D. That's all. The developer.
Yeah, it would. I would expect it would cost more than that to provide the same level of parking.
How many parking spaces, or what's the area or the area that we're looking at?
This proposal has 11 parking spaces. And it's actually not like the vegetation in there's a lot of invasives. There's not a lot of significant trees. There's really one big hemlock that you can see in the photo there. That's proposed to be retained, and the parking essentially arranged around that tree. The other areas of environmental significance are the wetland itself, which is offset some distance from the proposed parking.
What about looking at a current level, kind of establish a baseline for what the current level of road runoff contaminants are during, say, rain events in the lake itself currently, before we propose to put kind of more?
I'm not sure how you're talking about testing the water in the lake to see if we find any evidence of road contaminants.
Yeah.
Okay, we could look at that. I mean, there has been lake water testing in the past. I don't believe that was ever identified as an issue.
Yeah, it depends on the type of contaminants that you're looking at. right? There's sort of, I'm thinking of like ones that are kind of pertaining to kind of road runoff or tire associated contaminants or vehicle associated contaminants that you'd see sort of you'd likely see the pulse when there's a rain event, when you're getting more discharge into the lake. So we've been doing a lot of monitoring around water bodies, freshwater water bodies all around coastal BC currently to look at road runoff concerns, and are working with a number of municipalities regarding this. So just thinking in terms of that, and that's more to do with salmon habitat, but we're looking at, this is a drinking water reservoir, right? So that's where I'm even thinking, well, both are high concerns, but yeah, that's kind of where I'm coming.
Would you specifically be looking for hydrocarbons, Tanya? Is that would be the marker?
You could look at hydrocarbons. There's a chemical called 6-ppd quinone that we've been looking at significantly. That's more of a it's kind of a new contaminant that's been identified in the last 3 years that is significantly toxic to coho salmon and as well as other salmonids, and it's really unknown as to what other species are and our humans are, what that means for them and in terms of health as a receptor. So that would be one contaminant. We're measuring that in my lab currently. Metals are obviously a concern with respect to vehicles as well. So those would be kind of the three. There's a couple others, but those would be the kind of the two top classes would be pHs, metals, and then I would look at 6-ppd quinone.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether those have been tested for in the past. They're even the current roads, they're not right next to the lake. So, I mean, there is a significant buffering that occurs with the vegetation that exists there.
Yeah, yeah, and I guess as to what degree is the vegetation, it's probably the amount of volume of cars that we're having, but also the degree of vegetation and the filtration that it's offering for those compounds too, right? So, and would that, I guess, in theory, it could increase if we're putting in, say, a parking lot. I guess one other thing is it going to be paved parking lot or is it gravel?
The proposal is for a gravel parking lot.
Okay, yeah. So that would help a little bit more in that case.
And is there drainage proposed at all in the parking lot? Is it just gravel piled up, or are you going to have a drain through the middle of it underneath, going one direction or another? Or?
No, it would just be graded. So, it's got a 2% grade towards the edge of the parking lot.
Towards the road?
It could be graded towards the road. I don't think that's I don't think that's the way they've shown it here. It's probably graded the other way. But as long as it drains off the parking lot into the adjacent vegetation, that's that's the main thing in terms of the serviceability of the parking lot.
It would seem to be better to drain further from the lake than towards the lake.
Yeah.
So I'm hearing a recommendation that the drainage be structured in such a way that it drains away from the lake and towards the road.
That would make more sense, I would think.
Mhm.
Trying to think of that section of road. The road existence today is already cambered, I guess, off both sides. So it just half the rainwater already goes to that side of the road anyway, I guess, on the main road, on Grafton Road.
Yeah. And then it would drain, the road wouldn't, well, this portion of the road anyway would just drain into Terminal Creek, downstream of the lake.
But the generic issue you're speaking of, Tanya, that applies to a lot of roads above, I'm assuming.
Sure, but does it apply to ones that we're drinking from in terms of flowing into, I don't know, just increasing? I'm just thinking about increasing, you know, we're already dealing with some contaminants that are elevated above concern with respect to our drinking water. Do we really want to heighten the risk even more at this stage in the game?
Yeah, this being the incremental use being the parking, obviously, and cars sitting there for a few hours and dripping oil or whatever they're going to drip and right in that spot. Yeah, no, I hear you.
The thing is, people are going to come here and park somewhere. And you know, if we don't provide a designated space that's, you know, suitably designed, that they'll park places they shouldn't, that create problems.
Yeah, this is a much safer situation than what's going on now, parking on the side of the road. And also, you know, if you had a collision in this area, you know, possible contamination is far worse again. So making it just road safe would be benefits.
I guess for the Forester Lane alternative, and I would think that the Environment Committee is probably voting on this as well. Would they like, is that, you know, is that a safer alternative from a kind of environmental engineering perspective? I'm speaking to it from a toxicologist perspective. So not with my limited knowledge of.
I can speak to the Environment Committee. Last night they met and decided that because there is an environmental study for the Grafton Road location that says it's not, that it's an appropriate site, but there are no studies for the Forester Road locations, that they can't compare the two.
I think in terms of safety, either location would, you know, would be safe, you know, could be done safely.
And certainly safer than what we have today.
Yeah.
Can I jump in for a minute? Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
You know, our purview is Cove Bay drinking water, right? So we've kind of gotten a long way off of that discussion. The parking lot where it's going to go is not going to get water back into Cove Bay water. Our intake is so far away from there, and there's the mud dam between that runoff area and the lake itself, and so on. I just can't see it being a realistic fear that would get contaminants into our water. But I can see that if you go back up and park along Forester Road, right up to near the lake and near where our water intake is, you increase the chances of us having a problem with it at some point way down the road. Would be my thought on it.
Yeah.
So if you think that it's a safer initiative, like from a health perspective, to put it in the proposed area, how can you increase that? You know, we're kind of all speaking to a certain degree hypothetically, but like, is it possible to slope it in a direction away from the lake itself? water moves through these surfaces. Yes, it filters out the contaminants and so on, but it still moves through and things do get through, right? So is there a way to sort of, kind of encourage it to be going in a different direction, or?
Short of
Perhaps,
paving it, I guess, that'd be the only thing that would give you some sort of, and then you'd have to deal with the water that comes off, the runoff water, and bet you could tailor it so it gets captured and pipe it way downstream or down the road or something. Make absolutely sure, but what's the cost of paving? I imagine it's probably more than the cost of the job.
Right.
And paving would add to your overall pollution possibility. Just
True.
with a gravel parking lot, whatever comes off a car just goes straight down into the ground. What, a foot, 2 feet, 3 feet, whatever. And the amount that it's going to disperse out from there and the distance that it's going to travel. I mean, Tanya, you'd know a lot more about this than me, but typically the worst things are, luckily, the slower they travel and the less distance that they travel through the ground. It's been our finding when we did environmental studies on stuff near creeks on Bowen and what was actually getting from the pollution site to the water. It typically didn't work out to being as bad as we were afraid of at the time by any stretch. Is that a fair comment?
Well, just with I'm studying this is, lower flowing water bodies right now that I've been looking at across, so Metro Vancouver, Vancouver Island and Squamish, but, in terms of during rain events, before and kind of during rain events, I'm seeing like up to a 90-fold increase in road runoff associated contaminants in these areas, and that's with whether there's vegetation in between or not. Now, I think one thing we're starting to look at is how effective are rain gardens or other environmental initiatives that you can put in place as well. And maybe that's an opportunity to look for some additional funding or whatsoever, to not even just to address the parking aspect, but even along that area. Are there areas of concern along the road, with respect to the lake that could benefit from having, increased kind of vegetation and berms and so on to filter out effectively the potential of contaminants.
Yeah. But does it not make sense, though, with the amount of basically swampland, marshland you've got between the parking lot and the lake proper? Then that's a lot of filtration happening through there, organic material to filter, isn't it? I mean, it's quite a long distance.
Yeah, well, and maybe that's one reason to just see what the levels are during, say, a few rain events, to see what does that look like? What does it look like currently? What's the kind of the status quo? And I don't know. I'd be curious to see what has been done in the past in terms of other contaminants. But I think, one way to look at it is we get so much rainfall, right? So, there's definitely, I don't know how to answer that question without having, looking at some of the data. I'm certainly surprised at the levels I'm seeing in water bodies around coastal BC currently. And there hasn't been a lot of research done in terms of road runoff on this coast.
Perhaps, Patrick, you don't know offhand, you mentioned earlier that perhaps you could share the latest water testing report. Maybe we already have it. Maybe it's on our website. Point us to it at some point. But it shows us what has been tested for and what the levels are. Maybe some of this ground has been covered.
Yeah. I'll have to look into that.
Can I jump in? Can I jump in again? We have a study done by Whitehead Environmental where he looked at all the creeks that were going into the lake. And this is where we got some good information because we looked up at Eddie's Pit where everybody was very concerned about what was coming off old car batteries and all that sort of stuff. And even from there, by the time the creek got down to the lake, there just wasn't anything left. And they found quite high levels on individual sites. And one where there was a creek where somebody had turkeys and for Halloween, and it ended up that there was E. coli and stuff near it, but again, it never made it into the lake proper because the drainage goes down into Terminal Creek. It's quite a long way back to where our intake is. I mean, it's a long way, and it's down 20 feet underwater or something. It's pretty tough to get enough stuff going through there to even measure it. But certainly we have tons of testing over the years from environmental studies done from time to time.
I don't know. I've been around longer than Tanya, and I haven't. If I have seen this, it's been a long. Don't recall it, so it might be really worthwhile just to share what we do have, and if it's got all sorts of like tables in the back testing and so on, it'll probably mean more to Tanya than anybody. Maybe we should take a look at that just so we know what the baseline is and what tests have been done, and therefore what tests haven't been done. And it's probably, I think, Tanya, your concern is pretty generic. This parking lot's triggering questions, but I think I'm hearing your concerns or we have these without the parking lot as well. Is that correct? Oh,
Sorry, I lost my internet there.
oh, okay. I just asked you a question.
Okay.
I'm just saying that I've been around this committee for a few years, and I can't recall seeing these reports. So I think it'd be really helpful to see these reports, and in particular the technical reports that show the tables in the back with all the levels, what was tested, and therefore, by exception, what wasn't tested. And I think these things would be very helpful for the background. And if there has been a fairly thorough study done, at least at a point in time, I think we can call that our background testing as best we can do. But as Murray was saying, there wasn't concern at the time. And we'll see these reports, but there wasn't concern at the time these reports were done. And I imagine it was, Murray, about 4 or 5 years ago at least.
Well, I realized, Ron, that okay, so what I'm talking about actually dates back probably to
2003.
2003. That sounds right.
Okay.
But we have tons of testing that was done before we put in the water treatment plant. The engineer was called for testing for everything he could possibly think of to see what processes we needed for water treatment. You know, how much manganese and so on and so forth, all the different things that we could have and turbidity levels and how we conformed with national standards and potential coming standards. And I mean, just tons of stuff. And that would have been back, where would that have been, Kristen? Oh, no, you were gone.
It's probably about 10 years ago.
Well, I think the annual drinking water reports test for those basic,
Hydrocarbons.
Yeah, but they're certainly not the comprehensive contaminants that I think Tanya's looking at.
And I don't know if your internet was up, Tanya, but I was saying I'm hearing from you a fairly generic concern. Not this parking lot is an incremental concern, but even if this parking lot exists, you have the same concern.
Yeah, I do have the same concern. I just don't want to increase the concern
by
adding to. Yeah,
but
that's
at the same time,
like there's definitely a concern of mine currently with respect to our drinking standards for Cove Bay, right? So we're paying, just to reduce the THMs in our water right now, we're paying like $200 a month, and I've done thorough testing on our own drinking water to see how low I can get the THM concentrations so that my household is safe from a consumption perspective. So if I'm just thinking about additional contaminants and so on over time, and we're going to have more people coming to the island, we're already seeing an increase. There's proposed, development in terms of campsites. Who knows if that'll go ahead and so on. So that's And I don't want to discourage people from coming to the island. We want that, right? But my concern is we need to be able to handle it. And what's that going to look like with increased traffic and so on, and encouraging people to park in areas. And we just want to make sure it's done safely and wisely now, so that we're not thinking 5 years from now that, oh, we should have maybe put in an extra berm here, or could we have made this sort of a good news story than say maybe something that we're looking back on, oh, we could have done better.
Again, if I can just jump in, I'd really like to get on to the next item on the agenda personally. But I'm thinking that if it's just a gravel parking lot and it's downstream, if it does turn out that something happens further down the road, I mean, it can be dealt with then if it's a matter of grading or putting in a ditch or putting in a berm or whatever. There's nothing precluding it. This isn't a massive thing that we're building here if they're just grading it off and putting on gravel.
But when you want to slope it in a certain direction, at least right now, that would discourage, you
don't think it matters, Tanya, because with a gravel parking lot, the water is going to go right down a long way into the ground. You don't get a lot of runoff unless you get a bunch of organic material compacted on top, which creates the runoff. You don't want to build it that way.
So just to try and end this, what I'm hearing is there's not a great degree of comfort that all the data is there so that you can feel that it's not going to have a detrimental impact on water quality. But you're understanding the need for parking and safety of the people in the road getting to the trails heads. But whether you could recommend one over the other because you don't have enough data on possible contaminants, and whether we may have that data, and maybe Patrick could go back and find it as to whether there are any now or not. But at this point, I'm not sure that you guys are going to be comfortable making a recommendation.
Well, speaking for myself, I'm comfortable with it as is. There's been an environmental report, I gather. The alternatives don't seem to offer anything, don't appear, layman, to offer anything greatly different. But I mean, my only takeaway from this is that we want to make sure that the annual testing is testing for a broad enough series of contaminants. It'd be interesting to see the reports Murray identified that went in before the water treatment plant was put in. That would be probably our baseline, I guess, our ultimate baseline. But you know, maybe be interesting at a future time, Tanya, for you to opine as to whether or not there's other things they should be looking for in the lake testing. And because I think the incremental damage from this parking lot is not going to be significant. That's my own view. But that there may be other problems that we should be on top of.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I agree with as far as Cove Bay water quality goes, the parking lot doesn't strike me as being a significant concern to us. As far as recommendations to council that they change how they build it because of our concerns, I don't think our concerns are, fleshed out well enough to make it something that we're comfortable recommending.
Yeah, and the issue of broader testing, just as I see it on the screen, is really a generic thing. It's not related to this parking lot per se. It's not like, only do the parking lot if you're going to do more tests. I think this is something we should be live to in any event. But so I guess be it resolved that we recommend that proceed with the Grafton Lake parking lot as proposed. I mean, Patrick, do you think there's no merit to sloping at least the sub base before the gravel goes on, or anything away from the lake? If there's just not such a marginal benefit, I mean, we don't need to recommend it. It just seems like it'd be a good thing to do, but probably wouldn't cost anything. But I don't think we need to even put that into the resolution.
About the grading?
The grading, yeah. I know I see it struck, but
Well, yeah, so Tanya wants it in, Murray wants it out. There's two more members that want to talk. Ron wants it out.
Chris, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I apologize for coming in late to the meeting.
Yeah.
I guess if we were the only stakeholders to this, being the water committee, I mean, we could just put no parking signs up, but we're not. We have to share this with other interest groups and balance, I guess, our concerns with those of the other groups. Do we take priority over them? I don't know. And again, with we don't really know, what the detrimental effects could be. I suppose as long as we make sure we don't have like construction truck staging areas, it doesn't become something like that and it just stays as a parking lot, that would minimize it. But I don't know. I think we don't have enough information.
I have one more question that I would like to ask before you finalize your decision on this recommendation, if I may. Is there, I know that we have a provincially mandated limit to the storage capacity on Grafton Lake, and are we at that limit, or is there any future possibility that we would ever consider raising the dam again and to reserve to hold more water in Grafton Lake?
Basic, not for the foreseeable future would we ever consider raising that dam again. It makes it higher than the road. So if you ever overtop the dam, you would flood that whole area. I mean, if you had a major rainfall event and you made the lake too high, you then risk doing damage to the road if you had something bad happen. And the lake is 49 acres. I mean, no, I don't think they even let us, because you'd end up worrying about sloughing of material into the lake, so on and so forth. It would be a huge, huge, huge deal to try to raise that lake.
Okay.
It's not something we've planned.
No.
Raising the dam.
Well, I think then going back to the resolution, I'm prepared to approve it as proposed.
Hold on. Let's be clear on what this is.
Or maybe you just say that you have no objections to the.
Yeah, no, that's a better way to put it. Yeah, no objections to. I mean, obviously, we expect them to take care in construction and use appropriate practices and all that, not exacerbate the situation. It seemed to me that the more gravel they use, the better, but that's just my own intuition. That I just think that's and if they did slope it away from the road, so be it. It's not really going to matter. But if ever somebody wiser than us comes on in the future, they can pave it. They can do whatever they want to contain what might be an incremental issue. But I think we can move on from this, Tanya, unless you have any residual concerns. I mean,
okay, well,
the committee can't direct staff.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, well, so are you going to say resolve the Cove Bay Water Committee advise council that they have no objections to the proposed location?
What are you saying, Allison? The committee recommend that council direct staff.
No, to proceed. They're not saying proceed. They're saying they have no objections.
Yeah,
there's a difference.
Yeah, we have no objections to me.
Okay, wording. Just say what you want to say.
We recommend that council, not direct. The committee has no objection to the Grafton Lake parking lot as proposed.
Yes. Yes. So,
okay, so you need to resolve something when you're voting on something. So you resolve that to have no objections.
Yes, we resolve that we have no objections to the Grafton Lake parking lot as proposed.
Seconded.
Location
As proposed. We have no objections to the Grafton Lake parking lot as proposed.
And then, so the unrelated, the broader testing, we can talk about that at another point. I think it's a good point, but it's not tied to this.
Okay,
Can you not just say, that the Cove Bay Water System Local Advisory Committee advised council that it has no objections?
That's the way it has to be
Yeah.
written. So we're not gonna,
okay,
Yeah.
let's move on.
okay,
Mover, we got a mover. Ron,
I'll move that.
I'll second that.
All those in favor? Opposed, I should say.
Chris, hand up. Tanya,
I'm not sure my hand is up, but um,
yeah, there should have been discussion, Ron, between the seconding and the in
I'm
favor.
sorry. I'm new to this. We gotta get Murray out of his car. Do you have further discussion to add to this, Tanya?
well, I think it would benefit from first seeing the reports that have been done for the contaminants that Murray's raised, kind of to have some background information on what's in the lake itself. And then also, yeah, just looking at what is the current status? What are the current levels?
Okay, Tanya, I'm going to put a link in the chat of where these reports are posted on our website.
Yeah.
For you.
I think Tanya, you'll find that the incremental difference for this, given the fact that it is downhill from the lake and with the amount of organic material between the parking area and the lake, and the relatively low use of that area being a trailhead parking lot, I think it'd be a very, very extreme event to be able to get enough of anything to actually show up in our drinking water.
Incrementally. Yeah, I think Tanya's point is good about generically we should be looking at this stuff, but
yeah,
and but incrementally, I agree. This is not we probably have bigger problems. If we have problems, it's probably not this parking lot.
Exactly.
Right, but do we want to add to those problems right now?
Well, we don't
Even
have
though-
problems. We
even though
don't
they're-
know of problems right now, first of all. It reports to the
Well,
past.
maybe we should know what the problems are. We know what
No.
some of the problems are right now with our drinking water. Do we want to, I don't know, do we want to add do we want to add to things right now?
If you're presuming that this parking lot will, I think my presumption personally is that this will not incrementally add to the problem of the drinking water for the reasons Murray gave. It's far enough from the lake. It's downstream of the intake. I mean, I have, we spend a lot of time on this. I really think that there's no evidence that we have a problem from road stuff today, which we should probably research, but we don't have that information today. Second of all, we have no basis to assume this is going to make, add to what you use the term add to our problems. First off, we don't know if we have a problem. And there's no evidence that this will add to anything. I think that's the conclusion I've come to when I've heard the background. So I don't know where to take this, other than to generically look for things. And it's just, it's no different than if a parking lot got added to block towards the Cove from here. I mean, we should probably look at that too, but for different reasons. But that's not our mandate.
Tanya, you're free to oppose.
And then what happens if I oppose?
You put your
It would still
statement on the record.
pass, but you would be. It would say that you've opposed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's not unusual, Tanya. A lot of people that have concerns about something wouldn't vote against it if they were going to vote it down, but will vote against it if other people are going to pass it anyway.
Allison does it all the time.
Yeah,
You're free to
Yeah.
do what you want.
I think I would prefer to just oppose this. I see where everybody's coming from, but I also think we don't have a lot of evidence, you know,
Mhm.
to support things, to support what everybody's saying, to be honest. So like I would vote in favor of additional testing and looking at what current reports have been looked at. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
Okay.
Okay. So it's not carried.
Mhm.
So go ahead, Steph.
Do you want to do another, like after this resolution with Tanya opposing, then do you want to do another one about broader testing being conducted?
I suggest we get into the next order of business
Okay.
and then and use this as new business at the end if
Okay.
as time permits.
Agreed. So are we done on that one, Steph?
We need an all in favor and then any opposed?
In favor?
Favor?
Any opposed?
Yeah.
Tanya,
Tanya
Opposed?
opposed. Okay, thank you. You're done.
Okay.
Ron, moving on.
Okay, Public Works update. From Patrick regarding the Eagle Cliff Cove Bay connection.
Okay, I'll just share my screen again. We gave a brief presentation to the Eagle Cliff LAC on October 11th. And that's what I'm sharing with you here. So we did receive approval of a grant to complete. Oh, sorry, background. We applied for a grant in early 2022 for a broader scope of work that included connecting the two systems with a water main, building a new reservoir tank at the high zone site, and then also upgrading mains in the Eagle Cliff system. We got approval for just the one component, which was just the Eagle Cliff Cove Bay connection itself, estimated 2.1 million construction costs, and it's 73% funded by the grant. The remaining would have to be funded by borrowing on behalf of the Eagle Cliff local service area. So this is just a map showing where the water main would go from Upper Ocean View and then connecting near Upland Trail along Eagle Cliff Road. So we need to borrow about 800,000, and we're going to be bringing a loan authorization bylaw forward for approval soon. There's a number of properties along that route that we expect will want to join the system as well. And so that would then reduce the debt load of the Eagle Cliff system. They would contribute to the project as well. There's a number of culverts that have to be replaced as part of it. You don't want to install a new water main over failed culverts, and so that would be a municipal cost of the project. So we've grant's been approved, design is underway for the water main and the culverts. We need to go through an elector assent for the borrowing and getting a loan authorization bylaw in place, and that's going to take us into next spring. And then looking at tendering and procurement before the summer, and then construction from summer of next year into spring of the following year, 2025. So hope to have that connection in place before summer of 2025. That would be the objective. So that's just a quick overview of the project and where we're at with it. If there's any questions, we can address those.
It just picked up, and the culverts are an additional cost, not included in those numbers.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
okay. And
So
are
there's
there any
about-
other municipal works that have to be done, like road paving or anything, or is it all on the shoulder of the road?
There probably would be some that was in the road as well. Repaving, like restoring the road, would be part of the project.
Okay, and that's paid for in the budget.
Yes.
Oh. Any other questions?
There was also a desire for an update on the Cove Bay water treatment plant. Do you want me to do that now?
Sure, why not?
Okay.
You got the floor.
Well, we unfortunately there was manufacturing defects discovered in a number of the ceramic filter tubes that go into the system. There's two separate vessels, modules. We hadn't had any problems with one of them, and we were hoping to be able to run that in isolation while we waited for the warranty replacements on the ceramic tubes from the other filter. We did have a failure, unfortunately, in that second module as well. And so we're waiting on replacement ceramics for the entire system. We were told in mid-September, when that was and that order was put into place, that we were looking at 60 to 90 days. So that puts us into mid-November to mid-December. My guess is it's probably closer to mid-December that we get those replacement ceramics and are able to get the system into operation.
Okay. Any questions of Patrick on that issue?
How confident are you once you have those replacement parts that the system will be functional?
Well, this is the only, I mean, everything else is functioning. We've been through a bunch of challenges. Everything should work. It's I guess it's difficult to be 100% confident because we've had so many problems. I'm as confident as we can be that this is the last remaining obstacle that we have to overcome.
Okay, Chris or Murray, any questions?
No, I don't want to get back into that one.
Okay. I guess to finish off, I appreciate the candor and the honesty and everything, but I just really hope that we can communicate in real time as to what's happening or not happening in this case. So when the system's about to come up and online or is online, or if there's another problem identified, I mean, I didn't until Tanya sent out her note the other day, I didn't realize that it wasn't operating. Maybe I'm just not reading. Maybe I should be going to the website. Maybe that information's there, but I just would really appreciate, if it could be on this committee, just getting a note once in a while that, this is what's changed. This is what we're doing. I would really appreciate that. Finance update. This is the real fun part. The rate modeling of how the Eagle Cliff and Cove Bay are going to connect. Kristen, I think that's your presentation.
Thank you. I just wanted to share with you the same presentation that we had gone through with the Eagle Cliff LAC. So this was written geared towards Eagle Cliff because they are the residents in that area are going to be asked for a referendum to authorize more debt. So I wanted to share this presentation with you. It is our sort of rough cut at how we would go about creating a single unified local area by joining the Cove Bay with the Eagle Cliff through this interconnection project. So I just like to share it with you and get your feedback on it. Make sure that, you know, there aren't any huge issues that I've overlooked or we aren't capturing in the model, and see what you think. So
Okay.
Here we go. Oh, sorry. Share my screen. And sorry, I just need to slideshow. There we go. From beginning. There. Does that look normal to you guys? That looks okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is the presentation to talk about how we're going to administratively merge two separate and distinct local service areas, being Eagle Cliff and Cove Bay. So as Patrick mentioned, the project contemplates the building of a water main connection between Cove Bay and the Eagle Cliff Reservoir, and joining both the two local service areas. So the interconnection piece of the project is going to be funded by the Eagle Cliff residents through parcel taxes, and they were lucky to receive $1.5 million commitment of grant funding. The total project cost to build this interconnection is just over $2.1 million. And we're working now to do a tender, which is going to be put out through an RFP process. We have to get the borrowing authorization first before we go forward with an RFP process. The project will be shared between three parties. $841,000 is being paid for by the federal government, just almost $701,000 being paid for by the provincial government, and then $560,870 will be paid for by the Eagle Cliff residents. Now, they, of course, are going to need a loan to come up with this money. And we're recommending that it be quite a short loan, a 5-year term. But of course, we have some flexibility there. We could make it a little bit longer. But any of the potential project costs, if there's any overruns, if they are going to be attributed to the Eagle Cliff residents, because there's no more funding coming from the grant sources. So we're going to ensure that that we ask for sufficient funding, which will cover any cost escalations, you know, through delays in time, and also if there were any contingencies that we hadn't contemplated, that we make sure that we get enough in that envelope approval to cover any of those potential outcomes. We're going to go for borrowing to request $820,000 to fund the Eagle Cliff share. So what that means then is we'll have the properties in Eagle Cliff, we have the properties within the Cove Bay, and then we also, as Patrick mentioned, we have these properties in between that could potentially join the system. So those properties in between, they're going to pay a connection fee. Their connection fee is going to have two components of it. So one portion of this fee will go directly to the balance of the Eagle Cliff loan to help pay their share of the interconnection project. That will go, and it will be the benefit will be received by the Eagle Cliff residents to reduce the parcel taxes paid for that new infrastructure. So we have our Eagle Cliff group, we have our Cove Bay users, and we have our properties in between. So what we need to do here is to come up with a model that kind of respects everybody's equity contribution in the infrastructure in the system. So to do that, we're considering the value invested in the transmission and distribution infrastructure by the Cove Bay residents, the value of the equity contribution made by Cove Bay residents into the water treatment plant, as well as the equity that is invested by the Eagle Cliff residents in their infrastructure. And together, what we're trying to achieve is a measure of equity equilibrium between all of the residents in the new service area. So just doing rough kind of back of the napkin math, these numbers all have to be confirmed. We'll look at using the December 31st year-end figures to confirm these calculations. But at this point, just doing back of the napkin math, if we consider that on a per capita basis, the Cove Bay users have about 6,100 net equity in the infrastructure of the Cove Bay water system. And the users have about $2,400 per capita of equity contribution into the water treatment plant. And how I went about that was when I took the total cost of the expenditure in the water treatment plant, we don't consider the grant funding in that. We don't consider the unpaid loan funding in that, but what we actually consider was the use of Cove Bay Reserve money and any repaid principal since we've started to repay that debt. So that's what I'm considering is the equity in the Cove Bay water treatment plant. And then again, with Eagle Cliff, they too have a credit for their infrastructure of about $7,000 on a per capita basis. So when we look at the two systems, we look that there's a bit of a mismatch. Overall, Cove Bay residents have a little bit more equity in their system than Eagle Cliff has in theirs. So what I proposed to Eagle Cliff was that as a one-time contribution from Eagle Cliff to Cove Bay, in order to merge the systems, that there would be a one-time transfer of a one-time contribution from the Eagle Cliff system to the Cove Bay system of the differential between those two. And it works out, again, this is rough math still to be confirmed, but about $1,500 per Eagle Cliff residents to buy into the Cove Bay system, if that's a term that makes more sense. Then we have to consider the equity contribution of those new properties in between. And I said before that the fee that they would be looking at paying to join is going to be composed of two parts. So one will be a payment directly to the legacy properties in Eagle Cliff to repay a portion of that debt that's being attributed to Eagle Cliff to build the interconnection. And the second piece of that contribution would go to create equity equilibrium between those new properties and the new combined service area to bring them up to an equivalent amount of equity in the new combined water system. So once we have achieved that level of equity equilibrium, we'll have a combined local service area that will consist of all of the legacy properties in Cove Bay, all of the legacy properties in Eagle Cliff, and any of those properties in between who indicated their willingness and desire to join the new system. So all of these local service areas will be paying a single combined user rate, the one that we have modeled in Cove Bay, which is billed at 3 times per year. They will all be paying the water treatment plant parcel taxes, and they will all be assuming the ongoing maintenance costs of the combined area of the local area distribution system. The Eagle Cliff legacy residents are going to have an additional cost in that they alone will be required to repay the parcel tax to fund the amount borrowed to build the interconnection. So they are going to have another cost for, I expect, about 5 years in order to fund that interconnection cost. I created a chart for the benefit of Eagle Cliff people to kind of see what the cost to them would be for this interconnection. One also for the property owners in between. And what's relevant for Cove Bay is the change that you see in the annual Cove Bay parcel tax. Again, these are really rough back of the napkin numbers, but our parcel taxes, when spread over a larger service area for a residential property, would drop. I think one is about 135 right now. We would see that, we would expect that one to drop to 120. And the second one is 123 right now. We would expect that one to drop to 107 per residential property. That's actually, that's the end of my presentation. So I will turn it over to the committee to ask questions or request further information and just get a general sense from the committee. Do you think that we've managed to capture all of the required contributions, create that level of equity? And does that seem like a fair and equitable method to go forward with to, to look at creating a single unified local service area? I'll stop.
Okay, thank you, Kristen. That was very helpful. I think it follows along very smoothly. That's a good presentation. I maybe I'll start with my two quick questions. I hope they're quick, and turn it over to others for questions. But first question is the Eagle Cliff assets that they're mothballing their reservoir. It's going to be discontinued and taken out of service. Were those costs taken out of their equity base? Was that I don't got any accounting term for it, but
yeah, I was accounting for that by a reduction in what they what I project that they will have in their reserves. So when I'm doing that that equity equilibrium calculation, I'm taking into account the net value of their assets as well as the cash reserves. And I'm doing the same thing in Cove Bay, the net value of the assets plus the cash reserves, and measuring the two and making sure that they are on par with each other.
Yeah, no,
so
I just think of the reservoir.
Yeah, I took out the value of that asset and there's nothing there, but I do believe there's going to be cost to decommission it. So I've taken out the remove from their cash an amount and put it into kind of an allowance to
negative salvage value.
Yeah.
My second question, thank you for that. I appreciate that. Second question is, I'm looking at the one for the estimated cost to join the table, the nice table. It starts off with 2024 was $7,400 and then $8,750.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out if somebody joins today on the, in 2024, what do they pay? They pay $7,400 plus the $8,700. Is that?
So somebody in between, you're saying? I have to bring it up again because I don't have it in paper in front of me. So let me just bring that up again.
That one. It's the very last page of your presentation.
Okay. So those numbers there, these are the property owners outside of the local service area. So the equity, the first line item is the equity contribution for the value of the new interconnection. So this would be the $16,206 would be the payment required in year one.
That would be the one-time payment. Correct.
7,456 of that would be the portion allocated to that it creates equilibrium with the Eagle Cliff residents, how much each one of the Eagle Cliff residents is required to pay their share of that debt to pay down the $820,000 borrowing. So that piece would go to the benefit just of Eagle Cliff to reduce the value of that debt. And then the $8,750 would be an equity contribution that is being contributed to the new combined local service area to reflect what current residents have net equity investment in their infrastructure.
Okay, my question is really simple. So just be clear. If this person joins in 2024, they don't have to pay those same numbers again in 2025.
Nope.
Okay, but that was the way the table set up to be parallel to the other one. It's kind
no, that's if they join in that year. Oh, I see where you're going. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah,
that's a good
it looked like it was cumulative. I thought, well, nobody's going to join.
I've increased it by a factor of 5% because that's I'm guessing what the interest rate charged on the
and also you're giving an incentive to people to join earlier than later.
Correct. Yeah.
Great. Anybody else have any questions?
I do. Okay, so there's $2,400 that everybody in Cove Bay has kicked into the water treatment plant that we've never gotten a drop of water out of, right? So I would submit that we don't care about Eagle Cliff's distribution system. We don't get any value out of it at all. It only goes to their properties. No water comes to us from it, right? So they are piggybacking on our distribution system to get the water to them. So there's value there. But so what? We need it anyway. Why be unpleasant about it? They can use our water, our pipes they're getting good value for nothing. But I believe they should be paying $2,400 each towards the value of the treatment plant, because that is a brand new plant. There is no depreciation on that. There is no value that anybody on Cove Bay has received from it. So virtually at day one, or within 12 months of day one, they will be getting that $2,400 worth of value that all of us kicked into it.
Mhm.
So I would submit that because the Eagle Cliff infrastructure has no value to us, that a compromise would be for them to pay $2,400, or $2,312 once you dilute it, because once you've got more people on it, the price for each of us in theory should go down. They should be topping it up for us.
Mhm.
I would think that would be a consideration for you to look at.
Okay.
And the other concern, the big concern I have, is if part of the request for money for Eagle Cliff was not approved, then that work is not being done. And then they become part of Cove Bay, for example, upgrading that tank, up above Collins Farm. Once you get into how much do you need for fire and blah, 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 all the stuff that you should have, that sucker is going to have to be replaced with a much larger tank. And I would like to know how much. I would think that Eagle Cliff should be paying a higher proportion for that, because we don't need it without them. Does that make sense?
Does it make sense to you, Patrick, that there's a?
Well, it would be, it would be a tank serving, the north end of the Cove Bay water system, which will include part of what's currently in the Cove Bay water system, plus new properties that join the system, plus, that what's currently the Eagle Cliff water system. With the approach that we've proposed, it would be a combined system. Everyone would be part of one system. So if you're upgrading a water tank in Valhalla, everybody would be paying for it. If you're upgrading a water tank in at the high zone, everyone would be paying for it, and so on. So it's kind of looking at it a little bit differently than the way things are currently aligned.
Right. Okay, if I could jump in for a second. So on that point, the point I'm making is that we have a tank that serves us now. The additional cost on that tank for the new additional area being added onto our system is going to a substantial burden of that, I believe, should go on to the area that is going to require that greater volume. But the other question I have for you that I'm curious about, how many other things weren't approved for the money they wanted from the feds that are ultimately going to have to be done, that we're going to have to pay for once they're part of our system?
Well, we had applied for, the full meal deal, right? To try and achieve a water system that meets everybody's needs for domestic supply and fire protection. And you mentioned that part of that is a big tank, which that end of the system currently doesn't have. There's, the increase in domestic supply doesn't really change much the size of the tank you need. I mean, it's really driven by, 75% of the sizing is based on what would it take to put out, one house fire, whether that's serving 200 people or 2,000 people. It doesn't really change much. So it's, you would have a tank. When that tank needs to be replaced, it would make sense to put in a tank of that size, regardless of whether, Eagle Cliff's part of the system or not. The other component that was included in the original grant application was an upgrade of the current distribution system, which, is going to be needed at some point, is going to be needed also at some point in a large portion of Cove Bay water system as it stands now. So there are, even with the combined system, there are needs for capital replacement throughout. And it, that we went through a little bit of an iteration there of trying to identify, some differential requirements per capita for Eagle Cliff and Cove Bay. And with respect to the distribution system, it's very hard to see a basis for differentiating. There's old pipes everywhere. And that would become a shared responsibility as part of a larger system under this proposal.
Okay. Tanya, do you have any questions?
No, not currently.
And, Chris, any questions? I'm assuming that was a no. You're muted, but I'm going to take that as a no.
Sorry, Ron. No, that's fine.
Okay. I know we're anxious to wrap this up because we're in overtime here, but my belief, I share Patrick's concern that you just don't know where the next leak's going to spring and whether it's going to be on Cove Bay or Eagle Cliff once the two systems are merged. I liken it. It's like a marriage, right? You're going to combine a household and you're going to put the money where in the house the toaster goes or this goes, right? It's just that's part of the package. I think is you tried and unfortunately you didn't get as much money as you might have liked to get, but I guess they probably just bifurcated the grant process down to what you really need to make this merger happen, and we got enough to make it happen, I'm saying. So the rate making to me makes sense. I mean, I think Kristen's done an excellent job of highlighting the pieces to each of the three groups of stakeholders, and at the end of the day, it's anytime you merge system, you risk share, and having our 700 customers merge with 110 new customers plus maybe another 40 is very, very beneficial to the Cove Bay users because it does help pay for the treatment plant and future costs. And unfortunately, we each inherit each other's problems, but we also inherit each other's bank wallets. So I'm very comfortable with what I see here. So is there anything we need to do, or you just wanted our feedback?
I think actually our next step is to take this proposal to council. We haven't taken this to council yet. We've taken it to Eagle Cliff. We've taken it now to Cove Bay. We got a positive recommendation from Eagle Cliff to move forward with this proposal. I think actually it would be helpful if when we present to council, if we had a recommendation from Cove Bay, either in support or some alternative recommendation as well.
Okay. Does everyone feel they could support a recommendation? Chris, are you?
Yeah.
I'd like to jump back in for a second.
Yeah, sure, Murray.
What about my concern that they're only putting $1,500 towards the water treatment plant that we've each put $2,400 towards? Does it not make sense since it's a new asset that we all have the same level of equity contribution?
Yeah, my background is utility regulation, and when you merge two entities, you look for synergies, you look for benefits, and I think we're getting those here. They're coming, they're joining the marriage with their Chevys a little bit. They put more into their old Chevy than we put into our old VW, and we're giving them credit for that. And it's painful in a certain way because we're the ones with the wonderful new treatment plant, and you think that we'd be the ones that should therefore get a big benefit for that. But at the same time, I think the accounting is the accounting. I mean, their pipes are more, their houses are probably more spread out less dense area, and so historically our costs have been higher. I don't think that you know, I can't imagine a scenario where they join where we'd pay them to join, but they're actually, you know, you can actually take that to the extreme and say, okay, what if the differential between our existing distribution systems were more than $2,400 and we'd actually be paying them to join? Yeah, that would be very painful to think about that. But I think we're in a sweet spot. I think both parties win here. And it's, I don't know, it's historical cost numbers. You know, if you want to look at the, you know, cost per household, you know, it's obviously way higher for them than it is for us for whatever reason. And, you know, if we're doing a merger, we could pick another partner to merge with that had lower costs, and therefore they'd write us a bigger check. Well, then I guess we'd be happier. But they're our only dance partner here. Actually, I'm kind of curious. What's the number? There's 40 customers in between us. What's the likelihood of, are we likely to get some or all of them, or what's the thinking, Patrick? Oh, sorry, you're muted.
This was a while back when we were considering this project, and we didn't have any grant funding in the mix at the time, and we asked, we sent out letters asking about interest. I think there was 15 properties that expressed interest in joining. That was based on, I think it was based on 30,000 per property.
Okay.
And it's closer to 16,000, I think, is what Kristen showed. So I expect the interest will be higher just on that basis alone. So I think there's actually 55 properties, and you know, I don't think it's unreasonable to think that there could be 35 or 40 of them that are interested in joining the system.
So just on the back of an envelope, 40, 415s or six. If I got this right, $600,000 potentially coming in to the new grant utility to pay for this. Because Murray, if Eagle Cliff doesn't join us, then we don't have a shot at the in-betweeners. So I don't know. I think in the bigger picture, I think the chips fall where they fall, and I think it's something I certainly support.
A quick note on that. We actually sent out a survey at one time back in 2004, I think it was, to all of the people at the end of Jason Road in that area and Cardina or whatever, that Catalina. And they were overwhelmingly opposed to joining Cove Bay Water. And basically the logic boils down to, if you've got a well that's functioning and you're getting good well water, you have no interest in a water system. When your well fails and you have no water, you would pay anything to join a water system. And that really is the whole thing. Because, you know, $10,000 is way too much. Our well's perfectly fine, right? $30,000 is a hell of a good deal. We can't live in the house if we don't have water. So you can't apply math to this. We're gonna get the number that need to come on, or who have really bad water, and that's what you'd have to do, is go around everybody and say, are you happy with the water you're using now? Right.
But it's a creep. We don't lose, right? It's all upside to the numbers we're seeing.
Okay, but my point being that I'm just suggesting you don't read too much into the in-between people, because they are getting water somewhere else now. They are not getting Eagle Cliff water. So they're just a different ball game. They're a bonus. Whatever, I believe that's the way it should be looked at. Whatever number of them come into the deal, it's a bonus.
Yep.
But don't count on it.
I agree.
Okay.
But no,
I still have a lot of trouble, though. I have a lot of trouble saying that the water treatment plant just happens to be part of the infrastructure that we have. And I mean, if you were structuring a merger deal, you would be looking at the value of all of the assets when you figured out this number of how much the payment across would be. And we are contributing a huge distribution system to them as well, to get the water all the way from the lake to the end of Scarborough. Yeah, a tribute looking back in history at how much they spent to put a pipe up a mountain, and saying, well, we have to figure that as part of of what they're bringing to the table, but they're not bringing it to the table.
Yeah.
They're bringing it to their own table.
Well, that's why I asked the question I did about what infrastructure has been taken out, such as the reservoir or unused pipes or whatever that is going to be stranded at the end of this merger. The extent that they shouldn't be any unused assets that they're.
Yep.
We still have to confirm all that. I think we have to take a closer look at what you're talking about and whether the reservoir, the dam, and then the pipes that come down from the reservoir, which are all going to be out of service, were properly discounted. And we may find that it's closer to, what Murray is suggesting in any case, when we go through that analysis.
Yeah, and I guess you have to make them all safe as well, because there'll be a liability of the water system.
So Kristen has accounted for an assumed cost to decommission the dam and reservoir. That would be coming out of Eagle Cliff reserves, but we also have to make sure we're properly discounting that in terms of valuing the existing infrastructure. That we're not valuing infrastructure that's not useful to anybody.
Okay, so getting to the business at hand, do we feel we have enough to sort of, I'll call it generically support moving forward? I guess. I mean, would everyone agree that this is a laudable thing that's happening?
Yeah, I think we should have a resolution that we wish to move forward with it, but that we have reservations about the final accounting of shares, or you know what I mean, the value. The other thing is looking at the amount of cash reserves that actually flow from one side to the other on the date that we go together, because
that's been included in the calculation, Murray.
Right, but it could be adjustment. Kirsten, couldn't it be a year or 2 years before we actually are together?
I think we have to pick a date and move forward with as of such a date.
Right, but I mean, that's until they have built their everything that they're building as part of this deal, they're not really going to know how much they have in reserves, are they?
Yeah, because we're not using the reserves in the they're going to have more, not less, because we're not using the reserves in the project. We're using the reserves in the contribution to equity equilibrium.
And if there's an overrun, it gets taken out. Their $1,700 a year goes up.
Yeah, it's paid for by the debt.
Okay, fair enough. I guess I have to get off the ferry right now, but my point on this thing is I'd like to see an opening for us to look at these, refine the numbers a little further, although we certainly agree in principle with the proposal.
Yeah.
So do you like what I have here then? That
the Cove Bay Water System Local Advisory Committee recommend that the council direct staff to proceed with the Eagle Cliff Cove Bay connection project as presented at its October 31 meeting. And I don't think we need to ask staff to look at the numbers closer, because you are going to look at the numbers closer. Right? You've given us the best numbers you have, and you're still continuing to look at it. So I think it goes without saying you're going to do that.
Yep.
But so I think we just leave it there. Does anyone have any comments?
well, Murray will vote against it then.
What? Oh,
Well, how about putting in the word interconnection project? Oh,
I think we need to pick one right now, if it's interconnection or connection.
Yeah.
Interconnection.
Yeah.
Patrick, do you support that?
Yeah.
It's called connection in our minutes here, or
Yeah.
agenda, whatever.
Doesn't really matter.
I'm going off reports and
Yeah.
they're Okay, decide now, Patrick.
I think what you've got is fine.
Looks good to me.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll move this and, any second?
Yeah, I'll
Okay, and all those in favor? I'm in favor.
Yep.
I don't know if my microphone is on. If it is, yeah, sure, go along with it. I mean, it's not a big deal in my life. I don't. I'll say I don't understand, but I won't make an issue of it. So I'm in favor.
Okay, and Tanya?
Yep, I'm in favor.
Okay, Gary, unanimous, love it. Well, you know, Murray, utility regulation is like making a hot dog. You really don't want to know what goes on. New business. Anything else? Did we want to look at these reports, Tanya, at the next meeting? Do you want to digest these reports and then maybe next meeting we can talk about future testing of water?
Sure.
Okay, so we can we'll just put that off to make actually if we can make sure that it makes it to the next agenda.
Okay, Ron, there are links in the chat about the Whitehead report and a page that has lots of reports.
Yeah.
And then there's also a link to the latest treatment plant communication. You mentioned that you didn't feel like that you've been receiving information. That went out, I think, September 20th.
Okay.
And below that is the link to subscribe to get those.
Okay.
And you can also, it's your fault. And it's in it's in the signature of my email. So if you ever can't figure out or your friends want to sign up, it just in my signature says sign up here.
Okay, can I ask a really stupid question?
Yes.
Once this chat thing's over, do those links go away? Like,
yeah, I'll put it in an email as well.
Because I'll never find them.
Okay.
Thank you, though. Very diligent, but I can't keep up. Anyway, no further business. Anything? No further. So a motion to adjourn. Chris.
Yep.
You're good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
So adjourn. Thank you all. Thank
Happy
you all very much.
Halloween.
And thank you to all the people who work so hard on this connection. I think it's a wonderful thing, and I'm sure it wasn't easy. So appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks. Bye bye.
Thank you.
All right.